Welcome to Kate's Take from galsguide.org. Each week I talk about a movie that has shaped my life, and I'll teach you how to dissect a movie and find the life lessons hidden within. Welcome to the live Kate's Take recording. I can't tell you how happy I am to be back to the show. I actually had a 4-month break between doing episodes. But we're back. This is our second year in a row at Starbase Indy. So last year we covered Star Trek the motion picture, the slower than slow motion picture. And so we're now covering Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I know. I just thought it was fun because coming back. But in all episodes of Kate's Take, we look at universal messages that are hidden within movies that we can kind of pull out and use in our everyday lives, sort of thing. I am more of a Star Wars girl. I have covered every single one of the Star Wars movies. Very excited for Rogue One. However, I married a man who is a Trekkie. So this is Josh. He is doing these shows with me, mostly because he has a lot more insider knowledge that I kind of lean on. And when I have some serious continuity questions, he is the one I get to ask about. So Josh, what is your favorite Star Trek film?
It's Star Trek II.
Is it this one?
That's convenient.
That is convenient. All right, so your favorite one is the one that we are talking about today.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Although I do really like, although you said it was awfully slow, I did like the motion picture.
Yes.
It is slow, but I like the kind of the idea of we sent something out and now it's coming back.
Yeah.
So I like
that was the part that I really dug out. There was like a good 10 minutes in the first one I really liked.
But like all 70s shows, or 70s movies, it is slow. It is slow.
We both fell asleep during Serpico. I mean, we have a hard time staying awake during 70s movies. It's just the way they're cut, the way the story is. So,
The motion picture very much has that 70s movies feel to it. And
didn't it have 6 minutes of opening credits and then it had like another 10 minutes of just the ship?
Yeah, there was a lot of just long shots of ships.
From every angle imaginable.
So if you cut a lot of that out, you could probably make a really good movie out.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is in Wrath of Khan, I noticed they used some of those exact same shots.
Yes.
They recycled a lot from the motion picture.
Money saving.
Money saving, or they already had it. Like, it's in the can. So let's dig into the movie. We'll dig into Wrath of Khan. Last year we covered the painfully slow one. This one is much more fast-paced. It's wonderful details, wonderful themes, actually. The 3 main themes that we're going to kind of talk about and break down today are old age, revenge, and the Kobayashi Maru. Those are the 3 we're going to kind of dig into. 2 of the themes actually show up right away in the movie. The movie opens, if you remember, because we kind of give you a little bit of a refresher if it's been a while since you've seen it. It opens with the Kobayashi Maru in a training session where we meet Savik, who is played by Kirstie Alley. This was her Savik. I always like saying Savik, it sounds better. Can I change it? No. I like pronouncing things wrong. But played by Kirstie Alley, and she is a captain in training, right? So she fails the Kobayashi Maru. As we find out, most people fail it the first time.
Because there's no winning.
There is no winning.
Right.
But who did not fail it?
Kirk did.
Oh, Kirk didn't fail it. Oh, look at that. So we'll come back to the whole Kirk didn't fail it. What is it, Savik? Savik. You would think I could get this right. So when Savik questions if the test was a viable one, seeing how there is no way to win, Kirk says a no-win situation is a possibility that every captain must face. How we deal with death is at least as important as how we deal with life. So that kind of gets us to our setup, that we're going to see in this movie some seemingly no-win situations, and we're also going to deal with life and death. So it's kind of like our premise that they set us up with. So in the next sequence, we get our next theme, which is now Admiral Kirk. I know, I just like saying it all fancy stuff. He's getting birthday gifts from Spock and from Bones, right? And the mood is actually kind of captured by Bones, right? He starts asking, why are we treating your birthday like a funeral? So they quickly kind of talk about old age in that sequence, but it is a theme that comes up a lot throughout the movie. So let's talk about the old age theme kind of in relation to the movie. So Kirk is surrounded by antiques. That's what he surrounds himself with. Bones is worried that if he stays on simulation exercises and not getting out into the galaxy, that he's going to become one of the antiques on the wall. So Bones urges him to take command back of Enterprise. So the other theme that we have is, well, it's not a theme, it's within the old age. It's a hero becoming the mentor. And this is something that I talk a lot about on Kate's Take. We talked about it when Will and I covered the Rocky series. We also talked about it a lot with Star Wars too, the mentor and the hero needing the mentor. But the one thing that we see in movies is this transition of the hero becoming the mentor. A lot of times it's not really that accepted. Because we have few stories that actually show a successful hero to mentor situation. We kind of see that mentors are being put out to pasture, that they become only databases now to young students. What they really are, what mentors are heroes who have survived, and they have valuable lessons to teach us and to reach to us.
What are some good examples and bad examples in film of heroes and mentors?
So the good, the one that we like and accept, a lot of us, is in the Star Wars series. We've got Obi-Wan and Yoda, right, as mentors. We accept their transition from Jedi to Jedi trainer because they went into hiding, right? It's also Luke Skywalker finds both of them and he gains wisdom from them. So the audience kind of accepts, okay, Obi-Wan and Yoda are the mentors. Now it does help because the movies were told out of order. And there's a different actor for Obi-Wan, right? When he's a mentor versus when he's a hero, when he's a Jedi. A bad example is Rocky V now. I love Rocky V. Rocky V is probably one of my favorites. But it's a movie that was very hated because it was Rocky trying to become the mentor. And the audience didn't accept it. The characters in the movie didn't accept it. We weren't ready for that transition of Rocky to no longer be fighting to then become basically Mick, right? He tries to become Mick to Tommy Gunn and he fails. And then he realizes that he needs to become a mentor to his son. And that's why I love it. That's why I think it's the most worst example and the best example, because we still, as a culture, don't accept our heroes to then become our mentors. That's kind of that transition.
So should this movie have been where they let Kirk transition to that mentor status?
Go from hero to mentor? I don't think so. And it's mostly because Kirk still wanted to go on adventures, and we were still ready to go on adventures with him. So we weren't ready to see him transition into that mentor. So it kind of worked. I like that they touched on it just a little bit. Like this is a moment where he could then become the mentor with the simulation, with students, but we all kind of knew, plus it was the second movie, It wasn't like this is a trilogy and they're going to be done, no. Everybody kind of knew at that point. So I think that's actually great in this situation because there is no predeterminate age at which then you decide, you're going to become a mentor. It's one of those things where a hero that's not willing to go on the adventures anymore, that wants to, step away from the adventures and instead spending their time teaching others what they have learned on their adventures, that's when it's that transition from hero to mentor.
So a lot of the movie revolves around Project Genesis.
Yes.
So what is Project Genesis?
Project Genesis! All right, so I like how you're asking me, like I'm an expert in the Project Genesis.
You watched the movie too.
I did watch the movie too, but of course I had to look at the Star Trek wiki. Because it's like defining Project Genesis. All right, hold on. So we've got Chekhov and Terrell, right? They are on the Starship Reliant, and they're trying to find a test site for Project Genesis. And it is the process, from the Star Trek wiki, the process to bring life to a dead planet by means of genetic explosion, which reduces the surface of a planet to its elementary particles. See, they worded it better than I did. It's a device that kills everything and then brings everything back to life. Didn't sound as fancy as they had it. So what Chekhov and Terrell are doing is they're trying to find a dead planet where there's not a single particle of life, so that they can then test the Genesis device to see if it will bring life back to the planet. So they're looking at this planet, which is Ceti Alpha 6. to see if it's going to be a viable one. If there's anything left back on the planet or anything that they can, at least they were also talking about transplanting. If they found one particle of life to take that off of there and possibly bring it somewhere else.
Piece of preeminent matter caught in the Matrix.
Oh, yeah,
That was
see.
the other possibility that Chekhov comes up with because he's sick of
finding the
trying to find
tour.
the perfect planet. Yeah.
He wants to cut off the tour, basically. So Chekhov and Terrell, they check out SETI Alpha 6, and they end up finding Khan, right? They end up finding our villain and his crew from Botany Bay.
And this, of course, relates back to the original Star Trek TV series with Spacey.
Which is interesting because what they do is they kind of create a sequel from the episode, which is really neat. So after watching this film, which I feel like I've seen many, many times, before marrying this one, my father also watched the Star Trek movies a lot, especially Wrath of Khan. I feel like this one was on like TBS, you know what I mean, like quite frequently.
It was played a lot on
Of all of them, this one seemed to be. So, but I had never watched Spacey, the 1967. So he watched it again, first time for me. And it really does kind of give you some of the backstory of why Khan is so crazy. It kind of explains his crazy a little bit. But you don't have to see the episode to understand Wrath of Khan on its own, which is, very nice that they did that for us as well. So you're a Trekkie. What did you see first, if you remember? Did you see the film first, or did you see the episode first?
I saw the film first.
You saw the film first?
Yeah, because when I started getting into Star Trek was the 80s, or my late 80s, 90s.
Right.
It was before nowadays when you can just go on Netflix and pull up every episode. So unless it was on TV
Or at the video store,
you wouldn't see it. And so I started with the movies and then got into the TV series after seeing them. I guess 2 would have been the first movie I saw because 1 almost never got played for probably good reason.
A couple of reasons.
And so it was probably 2 was the first one that I saw, and that's when I started going back.
And this was 82, so that seems about right.
Well, I wouldn't.
You were 5-ish?
No, I wouldn't have seen it when it was new.
That's true.
Seen it on TV.
Seen it on TV with everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
So we get to know Khan's story within the concept of the movie, which is he is a genetically engineered superhuman, and boy is he proud of it. But he's been marooned on SETI Alpha 5, there we go, which has merged with 6.
Well,
it exploded and then was kind of sucked
6
in.
exploded, and then 5 moved into the position where 6 was. That's correct.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
If we got the numbering right.
But he does blame James T. Kirk for everything that has happened to him. That is very clear. But he's upset that James did not check on him like he said he was going to, and that he basically left him and his crew to die. So should we mention now the largest continuity error between the 1967 TV episode and the 1982 movie?
What do you mean that Khan and Chekhov never met each other?
Oh, yeah. No, we should have mentioned it. So moving on. That moves us to our next theme, which is the dish that is best served cold, revenge, right? So revenge is a big theme within this movie, and we see that mostly through Khan. Khan puts those native creatures, those bug things in the ear, giving me ear problems for the rest of my life. Wet willies are not happening. They give me way too much of creeps, probably because of this movie, actually. But it makes Chekhov and Terrell submissive to Khan, right? So then they are now mind control puppets that he can play with. And he does this and he finds out about Project Genesis, and he also finds out where Kirk is, or at least how he can get Kirk to him, right? So Khan has Chekhov call Regular One, which is the home of Project Genesis, which is basically like if they're on tour, it's their manager. They got to check in with the boss man. And Chekhov asks for all materials relating to Project Genesis upon their arrival in 3 days. They said that SETI Alpha 6 has checked out, and they are waiting for testing. Now, Khan knows that Regular One will call and double check this, and will actually call Kirk to confirm this because the orders came from James T. Kirk, supposedly, and that will then bring Kirk to Khan. Very smart.
Smart guy.
Yeah, well, he's genetically engineered superhuman, so at least they're proving it, right? So meanwhile, Kirk is back on Enterprise, and he's on a 3-week training mission. Nothing exciting is supposed to happen on a 3-week training mission. Oh wait! So we get some recycled footage from Star Trek: The Motion Picture. You know, money well spent. We also get an awkward moment with Savick, every time. I'm just gonna mess it up now, Savick. But we get that awkward moment in the elevator. And then Kirk gets a call from Dr. Marcus asking why he's taking the Genesis project. But apparently she's in a tunnel and the cell reception isn't that good in space. So a lot of things drop out, you know. So the transmission is cut short, but as always, I don't know how this happens, they are the only ship in the quadrant that can answer the call. It happens, I accept it, but at the same time, I wish there was just a little bit of...
That's one of those things they could have easily fixed by just saying they're the only ship available in the quadrant. But when you say they're the only ship in the quadrant, it's like, is there only 4 ships?
Right. It makes you seem like there's like, is it just Enterprise out there?
Yeah, it's them and 2 other guys, and that's it.
Yeah, because I always pictured Starfleet as quite big. I believe now it's 3 ships. I think it's Enterprise, Reliant, and then one maybe we'll find out about like
maybe. So then
3 operating ones at one time. Like that's it.
No more than that. They're expensive to make.
They're expensive to make because you know I saw every nook and cranny of it in the motion picture.
There you go.
But yeah, so we see Kirk take command of the Enterprise, which we all see coming. But at the same time, you know, that is actually part of Hero's Journey. Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell talks about a hero is not always ready for the mission that they are given. So the idea that Kirk is like, no, I'm an admiral now, I'm a teacher now, you know, I'm just going to go on this training mission, kind of gives you that hero's journey. And then when he's set with an adventure, bam, back in command. So Kirk and Bones and Spock starts what mimics a Facebook fight. I really do. I think it was a Facebook fight because you have logic on one side and you have name calling on the other. And it's very beautiful. They debate the risk and benefit of Project Genesis, being able to destroy life as well as create life.
And then Reliant shows up.
Of course Reliant shows up. And so Khan plays this friendly fleet member, you know, oh, our communications aren't working. We're just like you guys, to try to lure them in. But it isn't long before they are firing on the Enterprise. And Kirk offers himself to Khan to spare the crew. Now, this is a part that doesn't make sense to me. Okay. So Khan says he will accept the offer of Kurt's surrender if he gives him all materials related to Project Genesis. Now, we know that Khan has already been on Reliant 1, or regular one, because he's on Reliant, regular one. Why are they both ours?
To mess you up.
Yeah, there you go. But why does he assume Kirk has them?
Well, first off, he assumes that Kirk, since he's kind of led to believe that Kirk is in charge, somewhat.
In charge of everything?
And Kirk has some sort of authority with the Project Genesis. So he thinks that he's going to have the research material and the what and the who of Project Genesis. Plus, as we will soon learn, since they've already been to Regular One and couldn't find the Genesis device, then my guess Khan's conclusion is that somehow Kirk has the Genesis device with him, and so that's why he couldn't find it anywhere on Regular One.
Still think it's weird because Khan summoned him. Yeah. It's like, duh! But that's okay.
But it's also a good way to lead into them hacking into the computer of Reliant and then
of course. You mean mischief?
So, yeah, it's basically a trick of the script to get them to hack into the computer.
I wouldn't know what you're talking about, a trick of the script. What? So of course Kirk does find a way out of it because I believe he must also be a genetically superhuman person. But he finds the code to lower Khan's shields, right? And fires on them and fires on their warp drive so they don't have an ability, and also fires on their ability to fire as well. Yeah. So they can't fire and they can't go into warp drive. So of course they run off, because that's another thing they write in the little script thing. They're gonna just run away for a little bit until they come back and we can have another epic fight sort of thing. So they go off hiding while Enterprise now has time to check out Regular One. So they find Chekhov and Terrell on Regular One, and they use the last coordinates that were in the computer to find Kara Marcus and her small team that is left behind, including Kirk's son. And that's where it turns out that Chekhov and Terrell are still brainwashed. Surprise, surprise. They didn't just fight him off and be put into a box. So they're still brainwashed and they're ordered to kill Kirk. And they can't do it, and Terrell turns his phaser on against himself. And for no real reason, the bug comes out of Chekhov's ear. That was the thing. I'm like, the other guy had to phase himself, but the bug can come out of Chekhov's ear. So, but having to fail killing Kirk, Khan beams up the Genesis device and now has the ability to kill everything. Planet or moon, kind of like the one, Kirk and his entire team are on at that very moment. He would have that ability. But Khan is so revengeful that he wants to leave Kirk marooned, just as Kirk left him marooned and left him to die. So this is kind of that eye for an eye situation, right? That checks and balances sort of thing. Now it's either because of runtime or the fact that the villain never gives up that easily. We know that this is not the end, right? It's just a matter of time before these two actually battle some more.
So then you learn that David is Kirk's son.
Right.
And that was Carol's son as well, and that there at one point was a relationship that...
Which isn't alluded to in this movie, but we kind of just go with it.
It's just slightly alluded to in the fact that, she's talking about how you left and you went away and stayed, and she wanted him to stay away because she knew that Kirk couldn't stay in one place.
He would always be on an adventure somewhere, yeah.
She knew that that was his way of operating, so she had told him to stay away from David, and so that's why in the beginning of this episode, or the beginning of the movie, he has no idea that Kirk is his dad, and that he's trying to kill his dad.
And it's kind of a little bit wibbly-wobbly of when he finds out.
No, yeah, they don't really come out and say straight up.
We don't see the discussion where David learns that his dad is Kirk. We just know at the end that he actually recognizes it. But that whole discussion is kind of interesting because, Kirk does say, you told me to stay away and I have stayed away. And that David doesn't know who his father is necessarily, or at least doesn't recognize right away, that Kirk is his father. But what gets me is when Carol is explaining her reasoning, she also asks Kirk what he's feeling. And it's not, when he answers, it's not about his son. He says that he's thinking about the 15-year-old grudge with Khan, and he's feeling old and worn out. And I was like, really? Not a single thought of, oh, look, that's my son. She told me to stay away, but now I see him, you know what I mean? And he's grown so much, and thinking about what I've missed. So what are your thoughts on that? That kind of was like, oh.
It's there for a moment in the movie when he asks her, is that David? And you can see that there's that recognition there in him that, hey, that's my son, but immediately that
it's pushed
away. And that's, as you learn through the TV show and through the later movies, Kirk's overwhelming drive is always the Enterprise and
adventure.
An adventure, to being a captain, and he never wants to become an admiral. Really, it was just kind of, he had earned that rank, and so he took it, but he never really
It also could have been age, too, because I think they said it's his 52nd birthday in the movie or something like that. Yeah. And so it could have been like, well, at this age, I feel that I should take on, you know what I mean?
But it's not what he actually wants.
Right, it's not what he wants. Yeah. It's kind of like his cultural acceptance sort of thing.
He has a very much one-track mind when it comes to being the captain of the Enterprise. That's his definition of who he is the Enterprise.
Which, like I said, it makes me a little sad. Missed opportunities. But at the same time, character is character. And at least they're staying true to the character, so which I like. So, but Kirk and the team, they get back on Enterprise because of course they do. That's just the writer thing. But Reliant finds them again, and they are both headed for the nebula. Remember the glorious nebula scene where they're both going super slow because no one can go into warp drive and only one of them can actually kind of fire. But they go there so they'd be evenly matched, right? But Khan, he kind of needs some egging on just a little bit to try to get him into the fight. And he's just, of course, blinded by revenge and basically a Moby Dick white whale kind of scenario to get him back in there. And by using three-dimensional logic, like three-dimensional chess, Kirk hits Khan and cripples his ship. So instead of surrendering, though, instead of surrendering the Reliant, Khan launches the Genesis device, which will kill everyone if they don't get to warp speed, because there's a way out, right? There's got to be at least one way out. However, the warp speed has been blown up by Khan previously. So Khan is surrounded by his dead crew, and all he is thinking about is that he's going to kill Kirk.
Yeah, and my guess is that the issue with the Enterprise is something with the dilithium crystals.
Oh wow, you're going fancy.
No, because
bring it.
That's when Spock reaches in and fixes whatever's in the giant tube that radiates his face. That is
face full of radiation.
So he has to fix. Yeah, so that's basically the issue with the Enterprise is that they can't go into warp speed.
Right.
They can't get away fast enough, and so then they will be sucked into the.
The thing I always find interesting in any movie about space is there comes to a point where they have to go faster than the explosion.
Yeah.
Every time.
No, and then they do it in a lot of movies where you see somebody runs faster than the fire coming after them.
Right. Yeah. Cool guys don't look at explosions. You know that song by Lonely Island? It's that kind of scenario sort of thing. So, yes. And then you got to do the line. Do the line that Khan says last. I spit my last breath. He does it all the time.
I like it. That is one of the most quotable parts of any of the Star Trek movies.
But the other one,
Khan is going through. Well, then there's also the Kirk yelling Khan.
No, when you do, he's dead already.
He's dead already.
You wouldn't believe how many times that just comes up in everyday conversation.
It's very convenient. But
it really does, especially with cooking when we're like making something.
That's my favorite part of this. That's this is one of my favorite movies. Is it's so quotable, and there's
in that 10 minutes.
And well, not just, but the Khan part. It's quotable and it's exciting. It's fun. You don't have to necessarily be into Star Trek to necessarily get it. You didn't have to have seen the original episode just to get what's going on.
Yeah, this is a good episode you can just jump into. Good movie you can just jump into.
Whereas
you don't even really need to see the motion picture necessarily.
The motion picture, that's a little less accessible than The Wrath of Khan is, just because unless you're really willing to invest in it, it is kind of
the
slow.
16 hours? No, it's not 16 hours.
Well, what was even better?
It just feels like 16 hours.
Well, what was even better is when they re-released it at one point on VHS and added another 15 minutes to it, and it's like
I believe it was all ship.
Was it?
I think it was. Yeah. They just added more ship.
And it just but I love that movie though.
It started it all. That's the thing. I mean, it relaunched the TV series to get it back on TV. It set up
the movie series.
And the movies. Well, it was the first of the movies. Yeah. So I mean, and it was competing with Star Wars. So there was all. So, but let's dig into revenge for a bit, shall we? Because revenge is fun to talk about. So the first bit of revenge is let's bring in some science. Because I love bringing in some science. So there's actually an article in Scientific American, and I'll quote it here. Science has shown that the human brain can take pleasure in certain kinds of revenge. An MRI scan has revealed that thinking about revenge activities activates the reward center of the brain. That's where the feel-good neurotransmitters, the dopamine, is actually lodged. So much in the same way that sweet foods or even drugs give you that feel-good feeling, so does thinking about revenge. That is some science right there. Also, a psychology professor, Malcolm McClure, says the interesting thing is that the desire for revenge goes up if there are people who have watched you be mistreated. The costs are bigger, And if you act for revenge, there is a chance that people will learn what type of person you are based on how you will put up with mistreatment. So we can think about this in terms of Khan, but also of Kirk as well. Because, Khan was marooned on the planet with other people. So they were looking to him to guide and to lead, right? So, and also, Khan lost his wife in this being marooned on this planet. So perhaps as a way of maintaining leadership, Khan's hatred of Kirk grew and grew and grew. But then also you have Kirk and Khan challenging each other. And notice it's always throughout screens. These two are great at battling back and forth and never meet in person. And you have a little tidbit that you always love, the fact of why they never meet in person.
Well, because Ricardo Montalban was still filming
Fantasy
Island at the time. So he couldn't actually be on the set to film at the same time. Because I think if you look on IMDb, there's tons of trivia stuff about this movie. And one of the things I think in the original script was that Khan and Kirk were actually supposed to physically fight each other.
Yeah, at one point towards the end, yeah.
And so then that eventually changed, and then due to the scheduling with Fantasy Island, they never were even in the same place at the same time. So
yeah,
it just.
And I think they do a really good job of bouncing off of each other.
Yeah.
As far as it's not until you look back and realize, oh, they never were in the same room at the same time. And it was through screens, but it works. And I think that was a great performance on both ends. And I'm not one to kudos performance on William Shatner, but I just did. But so even though they don't, meet each other sort of thing, they both always have their crew behind them, right? So whenever it's, you can say, being mistreated or bullied or whatever, their leadership is always in question because they always have somebody watching them. So that makes revenge harder to let go if you're kind of held accountable by the people that follow you. But it also does put more people in the target zone. Because a revenge between two people, between Kirk and Khan, everybody on both sides of their crew, is involved in this as well.
Right. So we were kind of talking about the Enterprise can't go to warp speed.
Right.
And this is where Spock has to decide. He knows how to fix the ship.
Right.
And so there's that scene where they're at the computer and David's there, and you just see in the background, you see Spock get up, and he just walks out.
He has that thinking
and
moment.
Disappears, and nobody really notices it, and everybody gets back to doing their tasks and everything, and.
Which makes me wonder sometimes what Scotty does, or what Spock does on the ship. No, I'm just kidding. Because I don't notice he's there a long time.
He's the science officer.
And they're having a good deal of problems, but they don't have any questions for him for quite a few minutes until they start realizing he's not there. So they can't get into warp drive, and they can't zoom away from the Genesis device that is going to explode. The radiation leak has stopped Scotty and the entire crew of the engineers from working on it. But Spock gloriously has this idea because he's not fully human. So he thinks that he might be able to handle the radiation because he's Vulcan and not human, and be able to repair the warp drive. Now, remember at the top of the show how I said this movie actually set us up to see some no-win situations and learn about life and death? Well, bam, here it is. So we have the bookend situation with the death of Spock in a seemingly no-win situation. And Spock indeed could not handle the radiation. And I think he knew that. It's left up to interpretation whether you think, well, I got a 50-50 chance of whether I'll survive it, or if he knew he was going on basically a suicide mission and stuff. So, but he asked Kirk not to grieve, as the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Or the one.
That's right, he always likes adding that on there.
But at the same time, it's that whole Kobayashi Maru thing. It's either you're letting the ship die, or you
sacrifice yourself.
Sacrifice yourself. And so in this case, logic dictates, as he always likes to say.
Right.
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So he decided that he's going to sacrifice just himself,
right,
to save everybody else. It's for the greater good.
Exactly.
That he's doing it. So, yeah, it's one of the. I don't know. For me, it's always been, as a Trekkie guy, one of the sadder moments in any of the movies that I've ever seen.
Sad.
Is the is the Spock death scene at the end, and Kirk with his kind of corny acting and everything, but still, Leonard Nimoy, I think, really delivers.
Yeah, he brings it. Like,
And-
I almost think he brings it so much that William Shatner couldn't ruin it.
Yeah, basically.
I think he was like, I'm gonna do everything I can so they keep their eyes on me, keep it on me. and yeah, because Kirk's little no, it really irritates me. Like,
I think that's how they overcame the emotion of that
Yes.
scene, was by having Kirk say next to nothing.
right, bring it down, bring it down.
Well, there was the one in one of the trivia bits in IMDb earlier when they're putting the code into.
Yeah, he was overacting it.
He kept overacting it and basically giving away what was going to happen, and so they just basically had him do so many takes of that until he was sick and tired of doing it, and he just delivered it in a plain way because he was sick of doing it, and so. You got to battle against the Kirk overacting.
Exactly. And you can probably only do that once, because I'll bet you he was on to the director at that point going, no, I know what you're doing, I'm not falling for it. So in Spock's death scene also, he asked Kirk what he thinks of his solution to his Kobayashi Maru. And that now Kirk will have to face something that he has cheated in simulation, basically, and never learned how to deal with, which is how to learn to deal with death, because we have the death of Spock. But Kirk doesn't like to lose. So he sends Spock towards where the Genesis device exploded, right? To see if maybe possibly if this is creating a whole new planet, if this is creating life out of death, perhaps, just perhaps, this is Kirk's way of trying to cheat, once again. But exactly, he is trying to cheat for the greater good. And maybe Kirk did learn how to deal with death. I mean, that is up to everybody who watches it, interpretation. But then again, maybe he just found another way to cheat. So, and that is up to you guys to decide. So, so those of you who are familiar with the Kate's Take podcast, I usually always have, I pick a movie that has a lesson that I've learned in my life. And a lot of times I'll see a movie and I'll learn that lesson, and then I kind of relate the personal to the art. And the idea is that in any movie, you can find something that speaks to you through, what you need to see at that moment. We all have movies and entertainment that we see and we're like, oh, that's exactly what I needed right now. I'm one of the weird ones that happens to a lot. So therefore, I have the show. So normally I know what that lesson is or how I'm going to tie into it when I pick the film. This time I had no idea, because when we were asked by Starbase to, cover the Star Trek movies, you start with 1, you go to 2, you go to 3, right? You don't really think about it. Well, this one, Wrath of Khan, actually turned out to be extremely serendipitous. You see, this year, my original co-host, Will, he and I faced our own Kobayashi Maru just a couple months ago. His wife passed away suddenly. She was 34, it was completely unexpected, and his life was turned upside down, just absolutely upside down. Podcasting, furthest idea from his mind, not his priority, understandably so. So that left the Kate's Take show kind of hanging in the balance in kind of a no-win situation. Now, it's not the same as life and death. This is a podcast, and I realize that. But I had to deal with do you cancel the show? Do you find a new co-host? Will the chemistry still be the same? Will the show still be the same? Do I go solo? What in the world would that, what would that mean? So for me, I felt like there was absolutely no winning. So twice a year I have Josh help me out. He comes out as my expert Trekkie for our live shows. And then we also do a Josh's Take, where he completely overtakes the show and he does a crazy movie that he enjoys that usually I hate. And you can hear the eye roll in the podcast, basically. But I knew that we couldn't do this every week. We both have very, very weird schedules, and that wasn't going to work. And I thought about other co-hosts, but I knew the chemistry wouldn't really be the same as what Will and I had, and the show wouldn't be the same. So I grieved for the beautiful woman who had left us way too soon, and for her children, and also for her husband that were left behind. And I also was grieving the enlightening conversations that Will and I have before the show recorded and during the show. We would have a lot of goosebumps moments, like, you've experienced that too, and connections and that sort of thing. So I had to do a lot of soul searching, and I had to decide about the fate of this very show. And for a few months, it was pretty easy. It's a podcast, who cares, right? Exactly, they come and go, no big deal. But then I started getting letters, and people started, asking, when is the show going to come back? And the show connected to them, that that it was okay to see movies in a different way, that some silly movie gave you very good wisdom and helped you through a difficult time. The show also, just like a couple of weeks ago, won 2 more awards, making a total of 5. So that made it very difficult. So for the fans who love the show, and I love doing it, so it is a little bit for me, I decided to reload the show and bring it back, so it's called Kate's Take Reloaded. And I love that in this episode that I have Josh helping me, and I super appreciate it. But the future for me is going solo. I will have video footage, and it'll be me kind of talking about a movie that inspired my life, for good, bad, or ugly, and teaching you how to do the same thing. So to sign off, I hope Will is out there listening, my wonderful old co-host. To paraphrase the eulogy of Spock, of all the souls I have encountered in podcasting, he was the best. So I wanted to thank Will for giving me this chance. So thank you, guys. Do you have any questions, or what did you think about Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan? Open it up for you guys. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, go for it.
Well, for us who saw the original show when it first came
Right,
on,
yes.
and then the movie finally came out,
Yeah.
we had not seen a new vision of the ship for years.
True.
And so we soaked in every minute. And then when I got the VHS tape of it and saw the extra footage, it was like, yes, it was wonderful.
See, you're like, this is what I wanted, because the budget changed, yeah, right? So they could actually show you things that you didn't get to see before.
And it's interesting seeing the transition of Khan from the original TV show, where at the end of the show, he's okay with being marooned with his crew on City Alpha 5 because it's a good planet, and he wanted to control his own planet. He wanted to be
a new world to conquer.
Yeah, it gave him enough of his essence so that he could be happy with that, yeah.
But then you see this transition to this revenge-filled Khan because, well, his world crumbled, and a lot of his crew died, his wife died, and everything that he had thought would become had been crushed, and so it's interesting just to watch the character change from the episode to the movie. So.
I like that a lot. And I like that a lot of the behind the scenes, Ricardo Montalban was so still into the Fantasy Island character that he requested to get the footage from the original episode again, to try to get back into that mindset and take the fantasy character out and get back into the Khan character sort of thing. Any other thoughts? Questions? Yeah?
First of all, okay, I've seen this movie 100 times.
Yeah.
I watched it last Thursday. If the transporters on the regular one could beam them down into the planet,
right?
Why didn't those transporters beam them back to the Enterprise?
Well, it did. What
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, eventually, so they beamed from regular one down into the planet, and then that was when Kirk was trying to get, because they did eventually beam up to the Enterprise.
Yeah.
But
the 2 days, 2 hours thing.
Yeah, because Kirk was trying to get them, the Reliant and Khan, to believe that the Enterprise was way more damaged than it really was, and that it would take longer to fix. So that was why they didn't just beam up like the Genesis device to get it away from Khan immediately.
It's a movie.
Yeah.
That then would have, then it's kind of that whole thing of, if right at the beginning of the movie, if Chekhov, why didn't he remember that they were at Regula?
Right.
Or at City Alpha 6. If they're at City Alpha 6, why didn't he immediately remember Khan was on City Alpha 5?
They never met each other.
And then what couldn't he have said, hey, City Alpha 5, where's City Alpha 5? There's no City Alpha 5 anymore. And then the whole movie's completely over, and you leave it.
Sometimes if you ask too many questions.
It was 1982. No one expected to watch these movies 100
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the VHS boomingness of purchasing a movie, you know what I mean, was still relatively new. Nobody was buying movies and then watching it over and over and over again. They didn't have a long shelf life. You would see it on TV every now and again. Was the kind of the idea of it.
But
now we can pick it apart.
There's always those moments in movies where, yeah, if one character does something different, then the movie's over and you have no movie anymore. So yeah, in order for it to sometimes decisions have to be made for the script.
I took it up to conflict and tension. You know, a good movie, especially the beginning, the latter part of Act 2, you need a lot of conflict and tension. So this is that, test enemies and allies sort of thing. So it's like nothing can come to them easily or we won't buy it. But then sometimes it's difficult and we don't buy it. So it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of thing.
I actually had a real thing once. Okay, Kirk the hero, the original series hero, okay, now he's feeling old.
Right.
And he's not the hero he was.
Right.
Because he makes the mistake of not raising the shields.
Right.
And he gets Scotty's nephew killed.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes these mistakes.
Yeah.
And there's this revival, this comeback to it. The no-win scenario, but the comeback is part of it.
Taking, kind of like taking accountability for your actions, sort of thing. Growing and maturing,
But
at any age. Yeah.
I think he had, what we don't probably see in this movie, kind of the in-between movie 1 and movie 2, is that now he's an admiral. Now he's a desk guy more than anything. And at the beginning of the movie, he's saying he feels old.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the movie, after this grand adventure, he says, I feel young.
Right.
So this is kind of Kirk being rejuvenated, and you get
like the Genesis device.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but I think it's also,
6 or 7.
I feel like it's for the audience too. Because it's one of those things where a lot of times the heroes that we see in movies, are relatively young, and so there was probably, I can see execs going, oh, really? These guys had a show in 60s and 70s, you know what I mean? So sure, who's going to watch this geriatric heroes in space? And so then it's like, no, I feel young, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, haha, I prove it to you that a hero can be at any age, and be victorious sort of thing. A lot of times you also got to keep in mind who writes this. And if somebody is going through a midlife crisis, this is exactly the type of thing they would write it. I think we have time for probably one more question, maybe 2. Anybody have any thoughts? Yeah.
I read that Leonard Nimoy did not want to go back to Star Trek.
Yeah.
And
that's for
they gave him a death scene and he couldn't resist it.
He loved the experience of filming too so much that he wanted back in, and so that's because at the end of this one, it shows the photon torpedo just laying there, but it's not open. And then when you open on 3, it's open, and it's where you hear the baby crying off in the background and stuff. And so you could tell it was kind of written to go both ways, where they could have just
they didn't know if he was going to come back
and
or
move
not.
forward, or they could come back or they could have. I mean, they could have even gone with a different actor, because if you think he's been rejuvenated, he might not. Why would he look exactly the same? So, yeah.
They left their options open on that because Leonard Nimoy also didn't want to do the motion picture either. It was a struggle, and there was a lot of rewrites. Apparently, everybody had notes on that one. So he was struggling to get him on that one. So that it was for 2, it was a struggle. So it was kind of like, let's just write him dead and see what happens. That way, we don't have this struggle if we want to do 3. But luckily, he did have a really great time. He had a great director this time.
I have a book that Leonard Nimoy wrote called I Am Not Spock.
Yes, yeah.
And trying to get out of that character and not be typecast and all that. And so, there were a lot of issues there for him to not want to do it again, but I'm so glad he did.
I know, and I feel for him with being typecast. I honestly thought, I thought that the Daniel Radcliffe with Harry Potter, because at least he was young, but I had this fear and theory combined, that he would always be typecast as Harry Potter, but he went in such a different direction immediately and then just kept doing different projects after different projects. Sometimes that works and the audience accepts it. Leonard Nimoy did documentaries, he did his own movie, he did photography, he directed movies.
He did 3 Men and a Baby.
3 Men and a Baby. But for some odd reason still, it was always Spock. It's just kind of like, but that is neat to have that connection though. It's better to have a connection that means something to people, you know what I mean, than being remembered for a variety of different stuff. So I think it's a gift and a curse all at the same time, and I feel terrible that he was, typecast and feel like I can't get away from Spock. But it was so worth it. So yeah, I think that our time is up. So thank you, everybody. Kate's Take is brought to you by Gal's Guide to the Galaxy. For more information, including links to our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, visit galsguide.org.